First of all, I'd just like to start by joining with so many, President, in congratulating you on the excellent address to Convention that you provided yesterday. It was forceful, clear and incisive on all the issues of concern to our members, and I say well done and thank you. Coming as it did after that very poignant tribute to our immediate past President, Miriam Duggan, was a very difficult ask, and you rose to it majestically to that occasion. And of course, and indeed, I and indeed all the staff of the ASTI would wish to be associated with that fabulous, wonderful tribute to Miriam. Aside from being a wonderful president, Miriam was a personal friend of mine for well over 20 years, and we miss her greatly, absolutely. Now, I also want to thank and congratulate Donald Cremin for becoming President-elect of the Association. I know that Donald will serve with distinction, and I'm very much looking forward to working with him. I also want to congratulate Pádraig Curley, I see him down there somewhere, on being elected as Vice President. Pádraig is a strong and committed ASTI activist, and indeed, along with the Honorary Treasurer, Pádraig Murphy, who's also returning to his position for another year. Congratulations to you, Pádraig, as well. We've assembled a formidable team of officers, and I'm very much looking forward to them all as a collective next year. Thank you. Convention, for this report, I have, as usual, sort of stripped out the central issues from among the several reports that you have before you this convention. And many of the issues I will address will also be debated as motions, and indeed have been debated as motions already this week. And I'm not sure if I'll live up to the best advice that I ever heard about public speaking: be brief, be bright, be gone, but I'll do my best. Convention, as you know, ASTI members voted in recent weeks to accept the terms of the new Public Service Agreement 24-26. And the outcome was as follows: 8,886 members voted for acceptance of the proposals of 85% of the valid poll. 1,500 members, or 1,589 members, or 15% of the valid poll voted against. And it has now been ratified also and accepted by the Public Services Committee of the ICTU. Now, I don't propose to rehash here the terms of the agreement. You're all familiar with those. But I do want to acknowledge that once again, ASTI was to the forefront in agitating for the retention of pension parity for our retired members. They deserve no less. But I want to draw a few threads together this morning, if I may. As you know, the government have agreed to repeal the remnants of the FEMPI legislation, the provisions that gives the Department of Public Expenditure, National Development Plan, Delivery and Reform, God, but that's an awful big mouthful, so much power to reject union claims not provided for in national agreements, and frustrates agreed dispute resolution measures. It's to be hoped that the days of deeper saying no, no, no to pretty much everything that's brought forward are coming to an end. And as you know, the agreement is for 30 months from the 1st of January 2024 to the 30th of June 2026. And as I said, I'm not going to rehash the pay elements, the pension parity elements, the no strike clause and so on, you know all of that, but I do want to address the programme of work that opens up now that it has been agreed. And of course, local bargaining is the element to which I'm referring. Chapter 4 provides for that particular section, and it provides that employers and trade unions may negotiate additional changes in rates of pay and or conditions of employment up to a maximum of 3% of the basic pay cost, inclusive of allowances in the nature of pay of the particular grade, group or category of employee or bargaining unit. Now, this may include proposals involving changes in structures, work practices or other conditions of service. Detailed arrangements for local bargaining units will be agreed by the parties by the 30th of June 2024. And local negotiations within sectors concerning proposals will take place between July 24 and June 2025. The parties will endeavour to the greatest possible extent to reach agreement through direct negotiation, and where agreement cannot be reached and local engagement has been fully exhausted, the matters of disagreement will proceed for teachers to the Teachers' Conciliation Council, and its arbitration mechanism if necessary. Implementation of adjustments will be on a phased basis. The first instalment, equivalent to 1% of basic pay cost, will be implemented on the 1st of September 2025, and the balance will fall to be addressed in any successor pay agreement. Now, I've previously stated to our CEC that there are known unknowns here, unknowns that won't be fully resolved until we get to the point of negotiating the process. We know that the first instalment, equivalent to 1% of the basic pay cost, will be implemented on the 1st of September 2025, and the balance of a further 2% of the basic pay cost fall to be addressed in any successor pay agreement. So the fund is available on a use it or lose it basis. We are not sure what issues it might be possible to use it for, and we will not know that until the process is set up and the bargaining begins. So there are interesting times ahead, as far as I can see. But I will say this. I know that in terms of productivity, teachers simply have no more to give. We're in for interesting times because that's our bottom line. I now want to talk to you a little bit about our organisation. And in your convention reports this year, you'll notice a healthy increase in the membership numbers of the ASTI is reported. And there's a variety of factors that there's a variety of factors that have fed into that. And I've often stated that the most important cogs in the wheels of our organisations, with respect to not yourself, President, or myself, or anybody here present necessarily, I want to pay tribute to our school stewards, because they are the primary recruiters, they are the lifeblood of our organisation, and as such they are extraordinarily important. I also want to pay tribute to the work of our branch and regional organisers and the leadership provided to them by our Honorary National Organiser, Michael McGrath. And Standing Committee and many others have also provided an awful lot of input into the whole recruitment process this year, and indeed our superb staff in the ASTI have played a major role. So well done, everybody. But it's also important to reflect in the wider context also. And many of you will have seen that the ICTU have launched a nationwide trade union awareness PR campaign called Better in the Trade Union. And it's following on from motions and requests over many years that they should mount such a campaign from ourselves here in the ASTI and others as well. And the intention is to initiate an integrated campaign that deploys across in-person events, branded materials, press and media engagements through paid social media and digital video advertising. The campaign is designed to build a public and social consensus while supplementing and supporting coordinated workplace-level recruitment activity by individual unions. And that campaign culminates in the first week of May with Union Week. All affiliates are being urged to hold events that week to highlight the value and work of their union, not just for their own members, but for society as a whole. In an ever-changing workplace landscape, that message could not be more timely. Now, earlier the President read out a statement that was also simultaneously read out at the TUI convention, and I want to address a little bit about the ASTI and TUI unity discussions that was referenced in that statement. As you know, I reported last year that ASTI and TUI have opened the discussions on the prospect of achieving teacher unity. And for decades, this has been an objective of both unions, but has proved elusive for a variety of reasons. As I say, you've heard the joint statement for the two presidents a little earlier, and the first thing I would say is that ASTI is engaging in the discussions in good faith, and in the context that both parties agree that there are no preconditions. Scoping discussions on the issue commenced in December 2022, and for most of last year we had very little to report. All that has been done was to try to list the synergies that would flow from unity and barriers that would have to be overcome if a proposal was to advance. And I assured you previously that if a proposal was developed, it will require comprehensive and substantial membership consultation within both unions. I stated that the chances of the success, who knows, that's the truth, but that you would be kept abreast of any developments as they happen. On the 7th of November last year, 2023, the President of the ASTI and the TUI issued a statement, and I'll re-quote some key excerpts from it here. It stated, "Over the past 12 months, the TUI and the ASTI have been engaging in extensive discussions around the prospect of unification. We held several meetings, including 4 so far this academic year." That was in November. "Both unions have engaged constructively and in good faith. We've examined both unions' rulebooks and a potential structure for a new education union. There remains a considerable amount of work to be done. The aim is to create a new union that at its heart is member-focused, and it must both acknowledge and respect the traditions of each union, while also creating a new union that's able to face the challenges of today's industrial relations landscape. The merging of 2 large unions is not a simple process, and whilst a definitive deadline for the end of these discussions is impossible to predict, at the current pace, it is hoped to have an outcome that can be presented to the executive structures and membership of the TUI and ASTI within the 23-24 academic year." In actual fact, that ambition stated in November 2023 is clearly not going to be achieved, but that's okay. This is a process that cannot and should not be rushed. The 2 President's statement went on in November to state that any outcome that emerges for these discussions will require comprehensive and substantial membership consultation within both unions and will ultimately be adjudicated upon in ballots of members. The truth is that progress has been fairly slow. Both sides are anxious not to rush, actually. However, we have now agreed with the TUI to issue, as the President outlined earlier on, a joint survey of members of ASTI and TUI with a view to gauging members' opinion in both unions regarding the prospect of amalgamation. And members will be asked for their views in a context whereby the potential exists to create a new union that must acknowledge and respect the traditions of each union, while also creating a new union that's able to face the challenges of today's industrial relations landscape. It will acknowledge that any outcome that emerges from the ongoing discussions will require comprehensive and substantial membership consultation within both unions, and as I said earlier on, will be decided upon in ballots of members. The purpose of the brief survey will be to gauge the opinion of members, and that's a very useful thing to do at this juncture. So as you can see, it can only proceed on the basis that every member can see themselves being accommodated, and that a new structure will respect the traditional decision-making processes of both the ASTI and the TUI. And if we sense that members feel the work should continue, then we will do that. And if we get a sense that there is no appetite for this, then we will discontinue the process. We just want to check in with the members to get a steer on what they want and how they feel. Ultimately, it's their union, and their wishes must respect, and their wishes will decide in the future what happens. I want to move on now to Leaving Certificate redevelopment. Convention, there's no doubt that one issue that has stayed at the very top of our priorities this school year is the issue of senior cycle redevelopment and the Minister for Education plans for senior cycle redevelopment, which he announced on the 29th of March in 2022. While following pressure from the ASTI, we welcomed her retention of existing subjects and indeed transition year at that time. It was clear that when she made her original announcement, there was a series of mountains to be climbed to panel beat it into something workable from our perspective and the perspective of students we teach. We have consistently made the point that it is essential that the mistakes made in the introduction of the framework for junior cycle, which sidelined the voice of teachers, must not be repeated. And the Minister's words yesterday in that regard were very interesting. And to say the least, you can take it as a given that we'll be holding her to them. Further, key developments have taken place since that ministerial announcement, and it might be useful just to take stock. It's long-standing ASTI policy that state examinations for certification purposes are entirely externally assessed, and there must be retained in all aspects of the development of the Leaving Certificate. From that perspective, the standard measure in Minister Foley's initial plan was to change the final assessment procedure to significantly reduce reliance on final examinations and introduce teacher-based assessment components. The ASTI pointed out from the get-go that senior cycle change must protect the integrity of examinations and must be built upon fairness for students and trust in the system. We clearly identified and left no one in any doubt that it was and is a red line issue for us. We immediately mounted a vigorous campaign to secure this crucial change to the plan. We organised a number of events and initiatives which included a series of public and private events in conjunction with the TUI. Key motions were adopted at annual conventions 22 and 23, together with several others adopted by our Central Executive Council. That led to an announcement by Minister Foley on the 20th of September 2023 that she was accelerating the development of new and revised specifications in 9 subjects, together with work to develop externally assessed components in each subject that were not traditional written examination. She stated she was conscious of the more recent accelerated evolution and growth in generative AI, and that she had asked the SEC that further research would be commissioned on the potential role and impacts of generative artificial intelligence in teacher-based assessment. While the work is ongoing, she has decided to progress additional and practical components that will be externally assessed by the SEC. By taking the concept of teacher-based assessment off the table, the prospect of fairness for all, teachers and students, and trust in the examination system was opened up. That development came on top of the Minister's rollback in February 2023 of her proposed plans for students to sit Leaving Certificate Paper 1 in both English and Irish at the end of 5th year. And there were major advantages that show how decisive and coordinated action works on our behalf. On that matter, we worked hard with our colleagues in the TUI and with others. For instance, we issued a joint press release with Angreson and iNote in February 2023. It is important that we continue with this approach. I can tell you that when we were locked in battle with the Minister and our officials on these matters, teacher-based assessment and the Paper 1 issue in English and Irish, oftentimes tetchy meetings, to put it mildly, as you can imagine. There was one occasion where we bluntly put it to them, would the squeeze be worth the juice? Evidently, we made our point because the Minister's retreat on both issues was very welcome indeed. And we have achieved progress, and we are determined to achieve more. However, we are still not where we want to be in terms of the Leaving Certificate oral examinations. Following strong representations by the ASTI, the music practical performance tests were returned to within school term for Leaving Certificate 2023. And it was clear that the move to hold them in 2022 during Easter break simply did not work. Reversion to the practice that prevailed previously regarding that subject is a sound decision. However, it is regrettable that the ASTI demand that the oral examinations also be returned to within school term has not been met. And that is neither a sound educational nor logistical decisions. Students were this year enormously and intensively stretched to perform a wide range of subjects over a tight frame. It was pleasing that you, President, laid it on thick in that regard yesterday in the presence of the Minister, and I leave it at that. We won't be going away on that one either. As already stated, the September 20th, 2023 announcement by the Minister for Education, Norma Foley, revised a key pillar of her proposals for senior cycle redevelopment. In tandem with this, she also announced an accelerated process, as I said, of the redevelopment of the senior cycle curriculum using her Tranche 1 and Tranche 2, and indeed her later tranches model. The ASTI has encouraged its members to engage with the public consultations via the NCCA website and other mechanisms. The ASTI has nominated 2 representatives per development group. ASTI representatives work hard to ensure that ASTI policies are brought to the fore at the subject development group meetings and during decision-making processes. They also work closely with their TUI colleagues and any other allies they can find, quite frankly, at their respective tables. Today, I want to publicly thank them for all their valuable work on our behalf. Indeed, since the announcement by the Minister for Education of her 29th of March announcement, ASTI has worked closely with the TUI on a joint approach, as I mentioned earlier. And a key element of this has been the joint hosting of seminars for activists and subject representatives. The first of these was held in Athlone on the 26th of November 2022, and it was entitled Equity and Excellence for All. A second seminar was held on the 14th of October 23, and it's important that the two unions continue to collaborate on the wider ongoing programme for senior cycle change. The aim remains to develop common understandings and common approaches to the suite of actions proposed in the Minister's plan. A lot of important collaborative work has been done by the two unions, and to advance the terms of the joint position adopted here last year at both the ASTI and the TOI Annual Convention, which set out in detail our requirements regarding subject specifications and the accompanying documentations that underpin the changes to an introduction of syllabi. A non-exhaustive list of things that must be comprehensively addressed include workload, time, timetabling, professional time, CPD, communications, resources, and assessment practices. Decisions on breadth of content and depth of treatment will have to be made, and crucially, viable subjects needs to emerge. The minimum 60-40 breakdown must go in some subjects, and other members, our members' expertise and the wider scientific community expertise regarding subjects in the sciences in particular must be listened to in that regard. Teachers are at the pin of their collar with regard to workload. Class sizes and class contact time, all perennial bugbears at ASTI conventions, must be addressed. Put simply, investment is required. The lack of recognition of the immense change that teachers have already embraced and implemented must be acknowledged, and it must be rewarded. Silent gratitude is not much use to anyone, quite frankly. There will be no sense of meaningful partnership if this does not happen. Convention, we are now at a juncture that for teachers and those like me who have the privilege of leadership, it comes around only once in a lifetime. I love the old Ruskin quote, "Walk while ye have the light, lest darkness come upon you." And indeed, not to forget our own Seamus Heaney, if we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere. Colleagues, we need to make sure that the ultimate outcome of all of this will be to everyone's benefit. I now want to turn to the teacher recruitment and retention crisis, which is ensuring that schools are under enormous strain and are barely able to cope. Hundreds of unfilled post-primary teaching posts are advertised on education recruitment website educationposts.ie every week. I looked there one day last week and there was in excess of 600 posts advertised. A Red Sea ASTI survey published last year painted a grim picture, with school leaders reporting in their droves that they had received no applications for advertising posts and that there were unfilled teaching vacancies in so many schools. Recent research we have undertaken confirms that the problem is getting worse. The Minister for Education is failing to deal with the problem as it should be dealt with. She has done little to induce teachers back from countries such as the United Arab Emirates and so on, whereby on return they currently must recommence their careers at inferior points on the teacher's pay scale, irrespective of their experience. This position, in addition to the Minister's failure to address the fact that such teachers are normally obliged to return to part-time or fixed-term positions, often for years after their return, exacerbates the problem. Her determination to maintain the extraordinary casualisation of teachers' employment status in their early years is unacceptable. This must change, whereby, subject to satisfactory probation, permanent appointments are made available to one and all, whether they qualified in this country or returning from abroad, and successful applicants are placed on a point on the teacher's pay scale that properly reflects their experience. The excessive length of the pre-teacher training for graduates is no longer viable too. The 2-year PME must go. Shortening of the extraordinarily long teacher's pay scale and doubling the number of middle management posts in schools would help in no small way too. We need a minister to change her course and take meaningful measures that will restore and enhance the attractiveness of teaching as a profession in Ireland. The truth is that the minister and her department, together with the Department of Expenditure and Reform, I shortened at that time, have still not shook off the austerity straitjacket and mindset that inflicted such damage on our schooling system. It just seems that they can't get beyond it. And as Einstein once said, problems cannot be solved with the same mindset that created them. Convention, you do not need me to tell you that the impacts of this situation are very real. Schools continue to be forced to reassign special education needs teachers to mainstream classes. Almost a fifth of schools have been forced to remove a subject or subjects from the curriculum. So continuing to rely on measures that have clearly not worked is not an option. We need action, not efforts to deal with teacher recruitment and retention that have been weak and pitiable. Quite frankly, this minister's strategy has been as effective as someone standing in the middle of a river trying to catch fish by hitting them on the head with a stick. The crisis must be addressed. The lack of appropriate investment in the system and the mention of special education needs teachers there earlier reminds me also of something else that is happening and that is important. Circular 8 of 2024 was issued earlier this year, and it states that the establishment of additional special classes at post-primary level is a key priority for the National Council for Special Education and the Department of Education. It goes on to say that all post-primary schools can, on average, expect to have around four classes over the coming years. The Department of Education will also be in the coming months, issue to schools revised procedures across three of the most challenging areas for school leaders and for teachers, namely, revised anti-bullying procedures to replace the 2013 procedures, revised child protection and safeguarding procedures to replace the 2017 procedures, and revised guidelines for code of behaviour to replace the 2008 guidelines. Each of these whole school policy frameworks have statutory basis, and as such have a heightened importance for teachers, school leaders and boards of management. ASTI is calling on the department to enable schools to provide for proper resources and planning days to ensure that these policies get proper attention and staff are trained to implement the new procedures. I again ask the question, where is the plan to deal with all of this? Where and when will the CPD be provided? And indeed, when will adequate resourcing be provided for what's even currently happening, never mind the considerable expansion that I've just flagged there into the future? The failure to properly rebuild the middle management structure in schools that was effectively dismantled during the economic crash is another case in point. Our system is nothing more than a patchwork quilt of stopgap solutions. Convention, elections are coming, and wouldn't it be great for once if parties, and parties of government in particular, would pledge to lift us off the bottom of the table of the OECD countries when it comes to investment in education as a percentage of GDP. History and research demonstrates that investment in education pays off for individuals and for societies. Indeed, many of today's social ills would be lessened by investment in education. Someone mentioned yesterday the Eurovision and our poor performances as a country in that competition over several years. Well, I would suggest you don't despair on that front, because I can tell you by comparison to the investment in education league table, we're flying. Convention. Last week, we released the details of our annual pre-convention survey, which this year focused on digital technology and its impact on teachers' working lives. The research objective was to look at the multiple impacts of digital technology on teachers' working lives inside and outside the classroom. Teachers' rating of the adequacy of the digital infrastructure in their schools was mainly in the category of fair to poor. When it comes to AI, teachers' responses were both curious and cautious. 88% want to know more about AI generally. 91% want to know more about how AI is used in education. At the same time, more than 80% have ethical concerns around AI and about data harvesting. The survey also looked at work-related cyberbullying. 18% of our members have been subjected to cyberbullying. That is a shocking statistic. Another shocker is the fact that only 21% of our members say they have a right to disconnect policy in their school. There is a whole treasure trove of very useful information in the survey, and we can mine that in the time to come and seek to use it in the advancement of the members' interests. And the detail of the survey is well worth a look, and it's on our website. And as you know from previous reports I have presented to Convention, it is the quotes from the respondents that often provide the richest of testimony. Regarding the cyberbullying issue, teachers who have experienced it reported how it made them scared, nervous, and embarrassed, how it was debilitating and affected their confidence as a teacher. Those comments made for difficult reading, and indeed the area of workload loomed large too. One teacher wrote, "I end up doing so much work that I feel that I don't do anything well anymore. It eats into the soul and is demoralizing and reductive." Another said, "The department needs to work to create better working conditions for teachers. We are hemorrhaging young teachers, and this is negatively impacting teachers who stay in the profession." I couldn't have put it better myself. Convention, I've said it before and I will say it again, teachers never look for much more beyond the means to do their job effectively and professionally. It really is that simple. Karl Marx argued that the best way to proceed when faced with a difficulty is to rub together conceptual blocks in such a way that they catch fire. Now, ASTI has never been short of progressive ideas and never been short of the moral courage necessary to bring them forward and engage with them. Whether it's the redevelopment of the Leaving Certificate, the Public Service Agreement, the organisational challenges, or any of the other challenges that I've ranged across during the duration of this address, I'm reminded of the words of John F. Kennedy: "Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate." Colleagues, I believe the future is bright. Strength and unity, I say. Thank you.